The Haunting House. It was a bright, sunny morning when Sam and Charlie, two cousins aged 12 and 13, were dropped off at their Uncle Ben's house for the summer holidays. They had been anticipating this vacation for months. Their parents, tired of the usual routine, thought a break in the countryside would be a welcome change. Uncle Ben's house, located on the outskirts of a small, sleepy village, was the perfect getaway, away from the hustle and bustle of the city. The house was large and ancient, built from local stone with a wide porch and a lovely garden. The air here was fresh, the nights cool, and the landscape filled with green rolling hills and tall trees. The village, a patchwork of little houses and fields, was the epitome of peace and tranquility. But for Sam and Charlie, the most exciting part of the trip wasn't the house or the quaint village, it was the adventure waiting to unfold. The boys, eager to explore, wasted no time after unpacking. Uncle Ben, a farmer with a love for storytelling, had mentioned that the village was surrounded by wild beauty, forests, streams, and a river just a short walk away. "Go explore," Uncle Ben had said, handing them a small map of the area. "But don't go too far." Sam and Charlie set off, following a narrow dirt path that snaked through a grove of trees. The day was perfect, birds chirped in the trees, and the air smelled of pine and earth. They chatted about everything: video games, school, their favorite shows, but it wasn't long before something caught their attention. The path forked at a small bend in the road. To the left, the path continued through the woods toward the riverbank, but to the right, something odd stood out. A large, dilapidated house loomed in the distance. The house was tucked behind a thicket of trees, almost as though it was hiding, as if it didn't belong there at all. Its wooden shutters hung loosely, and the roof sagged in places. The windows were covered with grime, and the walls looked as though they hadn't been cared for in decades. "Is that part of the village?" Sam asked, his voice tinged with curiosity. Charlie squinted at the house. "I don't think so. I've never seen it before. It looks creepy." The wind picked up, causing the tall grass around the house to sway. The air felt colder around it, and Sam and Charlie couldn't help but shiver. "Maybe it's abandoned," Sam said, taking a step forward. "I don't know if we should go inside," Charlie said, suddenly unsure. "It looks haunted." Sam laughed. "Haunted? It's just an old house. Let's take a quick look, then head to the river." Reluctantly, Charlie followed. As they walked closer, the house seemed to grow even more unsettling. The front door creaked in the wind, and an eerie silence hung in the air. As the boys peered through a broken window, they saw nothing but darkness. "I'm telling you, it's haunted," Charlie whispered, his voice barely audible. Sam rolled his eyes. "You're being silly. Come on, we'll just take a look." They walked around the side of the house, their footsteps crunching on the dry grass. They reached the back, where an old barn stood, half collapsed. The boys noticed that the door to the barn was ajar. "What do you think?" Sam asked, his curiosity piqued. "I don't know, Sam. I have a bad feeling about this place," Charlie replied. But before Charlie could protest further, Sam had already stepped toward the barn. Charlie hesitated for a moment, then followed reluctantly. Inside the barn, the air smelled musty, and the sunlight barely filtered through the cracks in the wooden walls. The barn was filled with old tools, some rusted, others still looking like they could be used for work. But what caught the boys' attention were the shelves along one wall, stacked high with jars filled with strange, colorful liquids. "What do you think this stuff is?" Charlie asked, reaching for a jar filled with a bright green substance. Sam squinted at the label on the jar. "It says, herbal tinctures. Maybe Uncle Ben uses these for something." Charlie was skeptical. "I don't know. This place still feels weird. I'm getting out of here." Sam nodded, but just as they turned to leave, they heard a creaking sound from the floor above. The boys froze. "What was that?" Charlie whispered, his voice tense. Sam looked up. "Probably just the wind. Let's go." But just as they made their way to the door, they heard a voice, a soft, crackling whisper. "Who's there?" The boys froze. The voice was faint, but distinct, and it came from somewhere deep within the house. The boys hurried out of the barn, hearts racing. They didn't stop running until they reached the riverbank, where the sight of the flowing water calmed their nerves. "That was creepy," Charlie said, trying to steady his breath. "We should have never gone in there." "I'm not so sure," Sam said, his eyes narrowed in thought. "That whisper, it didn't sound like a ghost. It sounded human." "What do you mean?" Charlie asked, still shaken. "I think we should come back tomorrow and figure it out. There's something strange about that house, but not in a ghostly way. I think it might be important." Charlie hesitated, but finally nodded. "Fine. But if we hear that whisper again, I'm out of here." The next day, after some breakfast and a few hours of exploring the fields, the boys decided to return to the haunting house. They were more determined than scared this time, eager to uncover the mystery. Uncle Ben had told them to be back before dark, so they had to move quickly. They approached the house with caution, but this time, Sam led the way. As they entered the barn again, they noticed something they hadn't seen the day before, a small staircase leading up to the second floor. Sam took the first step, followed by Charlie, who still looked uneasy. Upstairs, the room was full of old, dusty furniture, but what caught their attention was a large wooden chest in the corner. It was locked with a rusty padlock. Sam approached it carefully and examined the lock. "I think we can break this open." Charlie wasn't convinced. "Maybe we should just leave it alone." But Sam had already found a small crowbar and was prying open the lock. With a final tug, the lock snapped, and the chest opened with a loud creak. Inside, there were piles of papers, documents, old maps, and books, all filled with intricate diagrams and notes. One of the books was bound in leather and had an engraving on the cover, "The Healing Arts of the Old Village." "This is it," Sam said, flipping through the pages. "These are old village records. And look, there's a map of the village with some kind of formula." Charlie peered over his shoulder. "What do you mean?" "It looks like a recipe. For herbal remedies, I think. It seems like the house was a place where they made medicine for the whole village." Suddenly, the boys heard the creaking sound again, and this time, it wasn't from the wind. A tall, elderly woman appeared in the doorway of the barn. "You found my old journals, did you?" she said in a raspy voice. The boys stared, too stunned to speak. The woman smiled. "Don't worry. I'm not a ghost. My name is Eliza. This house was once a clinic for the villagers, passed down through generations. My grandmother was the healer, and she left behind all her knowledge. But after her passing, the house was abandoned. No one understood what it was anymore, and they thought it was haunted." "Wait," Sam said, trying to process it all. "You mean, this wasn't a haunted house?" "No," Eliza chuckled. "It's a place of healing. It always has been. It's just been forgotten." Over the next few days, Eliza took the boys on a journey through the history of the house. She explained how her ancestors had used the plants and herbs from the surrounding woods to make remedies for common ailments. The house had once been a thriving center for the village, where people came for help, whether it was a broken bone or an illness. "Everyone thought it was abandoned," Eliza explained, "but it was always here, waiting for the right hands to bring it back to life." Sam and Charlie helped her organize the old journals and maps. They learned about different plants, the medicinal properties of herbs, and the old recipes that had helped the villagers for generations. By the end of the week, the boys were no longer afraid of the house. They had come to understand its purpose and how it had been a valuable resource for the village. They felt proud to have uncovered its secrets and even more so to have helped Eliza restore it. Over the next few days, the village officials and workers arrived at the house. They started repairing the walls, fixing the roof, and clearing the overgrown yard. The boys, now fully involved, helped Eliza sort out the herbs and medicines, learning how the village had once relied on this place for its healing powers. Sam and Charlie were amazed at how much the house had to offer and how much history it contained. They learned that it wasn't just a place for physical healing, but a place where people had come for spiritual advice, emotional support, and even guidance on how to live in harmony with nature. One afternoon, after the renovations were finished, the house was officially reopened to the village. Eliza stood on the porch, proudly welcoming the villagers inside. The house was transformed, bright, airy and full of life. The shelves were stocked with herbs and remedies, and the rooms now looked like places of comfort, not decay. The village officials declared the house a historic site, and Eliza was given the honor of running it as a clinic for the community once again. As the vacation came to an end, Sam and Charlie couldn't help but feel that this trip had been one of the most memorable experiences of their lives. What had started as a spooky mystery had turned into something far more incredible. They had uncovered the true purpose of the house, and in doing so, had helped bring it back to life. "We should definitely come back next year," Charlie said, his face lighting up. "Maybe we can help more." "I agree," Sam said, smiling. "This place is a part of the village's heart. I'm glad we found out what it really is." As the sun set over the village, casting a golden glow on the newly restored house, the two boys walked back toward Uncle Henry's house, their minds full of new adventures and a sense of pride in the mystery they had solved. And though they knew they'd be leaving the village soon, Sam and Charlie knew this summer would be one they would never forget.